Welcome to the Maine Real Estate Roundtable podcast. I'm Bobbie Grenier, your trusted guide to navigating the world of real estate in Maine. Get ready to debunk mortgage myths, unravel real estate mysteries, and learn tips to avoid costly mistakes. Whether you're an industry pro, an overwhelmed buyer, confused seller, or simply curious about life in Maine, this is the podcast for you. Hey, I'm Bobbie Grenier, and you have found the Maine Real Estate Roundtable podcast. I'm so happy that you're here today because today you get to sit in on a chat that I had with Chelcie Shappy. Chelcie is a certified drone pilot. She's a real estate agent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Northeast Property, and she's also the founder of Market Maine Marketing and Photography Solutions. And we are talking everything marketing, real estate photography, videography, and drone photography. So let's jump into it. Hey, Chelcie, welcome to the roundtable.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course, I was so excited because you were the first person to reach out to me for a collaboration after I launched the podcast. So
Oh my goodness.
that made me feel really great. So I appreciate that. And I was even more excited when I started looking you up. You know, we've worked together, of course, but, to know a little bit more about you, I was excited to learn a little more and some secrets. I'm like, she's keeping secrets from me.
I tend to do that. I tend to have my hands in about 10 different things at once. So you're not the first person to feel that way.
Yeah, well, it was a pleasant surprise for sure. So when we initially talked, we were going to talk about, photography and drone photography, and we're still going to talk about that. But before we get to that, and before we get to your role as a real estate agent, I want you to tell us a little bit about the company that you founded. So it's Marketing Maine Marketing and Photography Solutions. Did I get that right?
Yeah, Market Maine. So, and it's not Maine like I tend to spell it sometimes. It's Market Maine, Main, and the whole premise of that was to market Main Street. So about 4 years ago, about 5 years ago, I bought an old camera off from a professional photographer that was upgrading their equipment, and I just decided that I did photography now. So I did it for about a year, just as a hobby. And I really saw the need for your small businesses in the area or service providers in the area for a multitude of different businesses um, lacking in their representation of themselves and their company through photography. Stock images are really popular. If you're selling heat pumps, it's real easy to grab a picture of a heat pump offline and use it. But what I really thought was needed was someone to um, come in and do shoots for small businesses of whatever product or service they had, so that way they would have those images that they could use as stock images in their social media, their digital marketing, their print marketing, something that's a true representation of their business and what they're doing here locally.
And yeah, in looking at your website, I want to get those fiddlehead pictures. Those are great. Well, I'm trying to, not only, do this as real estate, but also sort of a main lifestyle segment to the podcast. And I'm not there yet, but we'll talk about that later on. But you definitely hit the nail on the head that there are so many between Canva and Google and all of that. There are so many images out there that everybody else can have. There's nothing special about them. There's nothing specific to the small business. So that's really a great idea and a need that needs to be filled because we're all doing it because it is so easy. But I think the results from getting something specific for your company would definitely be an advantage. So can you tell me a little bit more about your marketing background?
Yeah, so I fell into marketing completely accidentally. I started working in college, and I was lucky enough to get a position with Maine General Medical Center. Um, and I ended up staying there for 7 years. And throughout my 7 years there, I started as an admin and like I said, fell headfirst into the marketing. And by the time I left, I was a project coordinator, and we handled everything from the website to, taking photos for flyers and, and social media, and managing the social media, and creating projects that could. It was a wellness program that would bring in people to be interested into wellness, whether it be nutrition or exercise, all the different facets. So it was really a great first job to have, and really got me passionate about marketing. From there, I dove headfirst into real estate, which again, people don't necessarily think of real estate, being a real estate agent, as a marketing position, but um, us independent agents, we do it all, and it's actually a lot about marketing. So I dove into that for a couple years, took a little brief break, and ended up at the Bangor International Airport as their marketing assistant there for a couple of years. And then I took the position for the Simpson team as their marketing coordinator. And I've been there the last 3 years, and now I'm back on my own. So I've been doing it kind of consistently for the last decade at least, and I just enjoy it so much.
You made a very good point, which segues nicely into this. I don't think people realize the marketing that goes in that real estate agents have to do and what goes into it. And if you've been in the business a few years, like I have, there was not all of the digital marketing, the social media. It was cards and flyers and that sort of thing, ads in magazines. And I feel like now, if you don't jump on that digital marketing train, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, the internet's been around a little while. However, all of these industries, real estate included, it's online. People are shopping online. When you're selling your home, you are selling a product essentially. And so when we think of shopping for products, say that you're shopping for a vacuum cleaner, where's the first place that you go to spend $300 to $500, let alone 300 to $500,000? You're going to go online. You're going to shop around. You're going to look at things. And I think the photography piece that I found so interesting is when you think about that vacuum online that you're going to do price shop. You might read some reviews. You might go around. Um, what do those pictures look like when you buy a vacuum? They're not a cell phone picture that someone took in their messy house, with the dog underfoot and all of that. It's professional photography, and of course, larger companies, always have the stronghold over that. Obviously, their marketing budgets are probably a little bit more than your independent real estate agent. However, we are all consumers of purchasing goods, and it's just completely switched to the point that I read a statistic. I don't know if it's true or not, but that like 98% of home buying, it starts online now, and 10, 15 years ago that wasn't the case. So it's really completely taken over the industry.
Absolutely. And to your point, real estate agents have to wear so many hats. You
Yep.
have the, you know, legal piece of it, the business end of it, the marketing end of it. So I think that companies that do have, a marketing department or a large budget, that's a very different situation than an agent that's on their own and they have to decide, do I have this or does my seller have this within their budget to hire a professional photographer? So
Right.
the fact that you can do all of that, that's great. Your sellers must love you.
It helps for sure to have it in house.
Well, you made the point that when you're selling your home, it's a product. And I don't think that people always consider it that way. But I know you go online and you look at all the pictures and you think, I love it. That looks great. Or why are those dogs in the picture? Why didn't they clean
Yeah.
out the dirty dishes? And you can tell the pictures that were taken, and cell phones take beautiful pictures now. I take
Mhm.
a lot of pictures with my cell phones. You can tell the difference, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you really can tell, and we are as we consume with our eyes. It's just the way it is. So when you're looking at that photo, like you had mentioned, why is that dog in that photo? It's so easy to get distracted while looking at photos. And so what I like to tell sellers is, this is a product. Your home is a product, but put yourself in the buyer's shoes. If you were online and you're scrolling through Zillow, you've already got some things picked out. You kind of know what location you're looking for. You kind of know your price range that you're looking for. However, if you put up three houses that are very similar within your criteria, and one of those houses has exceptional photography, the home is clean, free from clutter, you don't see things in the photos that are distracting you from the product that you're trying to purchase, you're gonna be more excited about that home. It's just the way it is. Another stat that I saw is between 50 and 60% of homes that have professional photography or videography, their views are 50 to 60% higher than those without. And I think it's enticing to the eye when you see it. You can visualize the lifestyle you want. Might not be the lifestyle you have, but with the clean colors, the clean rooms, not cluttered, minimal furniture, all of that, you can really picture yourself in a home, versus when you see cluttered homes, which I know is outside of photography a little bit, but presentation is everything. I mean, think if you were online dating, if you don't have a great first impression with that first photo, you're gonna swipe on. Just
You're not
kind of a
swiping
funny way
right,
to
are you,
say it.
Chelsea? That's a really good comparison because you want to put the property in the absolute best light. However, you need to represent it realistically.
Correct, which brings me to a whole other piece that I wasn't sure if we were going to get into or not, but
Let's get into
as
it.
I think we're gonna see, I don't know if it's gonna be a struggle or what's gonna happen. I don't have a crystal ball, but with the days of AI coming, and being able to edit photos with a click and not an individual person that may be scrutinizing over lighting versus wiping something out completely. I'm really curious to see how the future moves forward using that as a tool, and seeing how much trouble we get into. I remember I got my real estate license about 8 years ago, and I remember I was scared to death by this story that this agent had been sued, because he had taken a photo of this house that he had been paid to list, and it was right within walking distance of a large power plant, like larger than your normal power line. And so the agent or somebody edited out those power lines for their photos, which resulted in a huge lawsuit. And so when I heard that, I don't know how old I was, but I was like, oh my gosh, I can't Photoshop anything in any of my photos because I don't want to get in trouble. And then today you see, using AI, and other methods, other software to, furnish an entire room and have it be just completely computer generated, or, to change out lighting, or, this and that. It's going to be really interesting where that takes us in the future, I think.
That's a really great point because, like we all do for ourselves, we like to have the better angles, the better light,
Right.
as long as it's still us,
Right.
good enough, good enough. But you need to find that happy medium between putting the property in the best light and being given honest representation as to what the property is,
Exactly.
because it's not a good thing when buyers show up and they're disappointed, or
Yeah,
during
don't want
during
that.
COVID, not showing
Yeah,
up, doing it all by, pictures and video. I would never have the nerves to do that, but I know a lot of people did. I closed
yeah,
quite a few deals that the walkthrough was the first in-person viewing of the
yeah,
property.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's more and more common. I can't tell you in the last couple of years how many out of state buyers we had that would have us do a video walkthrough, if there wasn't one already available, from the seller. And like you said, have the walkthrough be their first visit, or have no walkthrough at all, which is mind-boggling to me. But you know, that has been the case, and we are seeing more and more of that, especially with this digital age. People are just very, I don't want to say trusting, but you know, they know what they want, and they're willing to take that risk to get it in a tight market.
Absolutely, and that's when the trust needs to fall back on whoever they're working, with for an agent that's going to and I know so many agents that are like, "I show them everything, the inside of the closet, the stairs down to the cellar, what the attic or the crawl space looks like." So,
Yeah,
that's actually a really good point, and during COVID, those were unusual times and desperate times.
correct.
But again, everything is, we can now do remote notarization. I can do remote signings. I do
Yeah,
them all the time. So people don't want to physically have to be there. But the other thing
absolutely.
I'm interested to know your thoughts on because this has been such a seller's market, our sellers have gotten very, I don't know, spoiled, is that the right word? Very accustomed to maybe not having to put forth as much effort to market their house because, the inventory is so low. What are your thoughts there, Chelsea?
Yeah, well, when the news tells you every evening that, you know, there's not enough housing and, you know, it's a seller's market and, you know, push, 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 you absolutely get the seller who's like, here's my house in all of its glory, sell it for me. And I think it's a lot of the agent's job to educate the seller that the better your house looks, the more presentable it is, the more ready it is for a buyer, the more money you're going to get at the end of bottom line. You know, you think about what I've seen in the last couple of years with houses that have hit the market, and you get 10 calls from 10 different buyers that say, I need this house. And back at those, the houses had many things in common. And one is that they were usually clean, very clean. They were staged well. And there's a difference between having a staging company and staging your own furniture properly. But they were cute. They were pleasable to the consumer as to allowing the buyer to envision themselves in the house. Now, were these houses something that would have sold for what they sold for if they weren't in the condition that they were viewing wise? I don't think so. I know the market has kind of changed that. Um, but I think if you're prepared, you're have a fresh coat of paint, you have taken out all of your personal items, all of those things, you're going to get more money. It's going to drive buyers to want your house over someone who's not willing to do those things. And what I try and tell sellers is at the end of this, you want to sell your house. The goal of this is that you are going to leave the home that you're currently in with all of your current belongings, and you're going to move it to whatever next adventure it is that you're going to be taking on. So why not start the process now? Get to a place that the home is in good showable condition. You've packed up some stuff and sent it to a storage unit. You know, whatever it is that you need to do, you will make more money than if you just try and sell it as is, even in a seller's market.
And what about tips? We talked about the decluttering. What are some tips that maybe people wouldn't think about in getting their home ready for photos?
Yeah. So one thing that I find is pretty common is people will say, I've got all these boxes, but I'm going to be there at the shoot. And when you're done with one room, we'll just move all the boxes to the other room. And we'll go on as we go along. It's a great idea in theory. However, one of the things that I like to do for our listing photos is do a walkthrough video. I had kind of mentioned before that we have a lot of out of state buyers, and so by doing a video walkthrough, I've never done the 360 tours or anything like that. I haven't gotten into that deep. But what we normally do is a walkthrough to show buyers who may not be readily available to come see the house, what the layout is like. Pictures can be deceiving, especially in how they're arranged. You can think, you always go with your big ones first, your kitchen, your living room, your dining room area, and then you kind of go from there. But seeing that walking layout is really helpful for buyers to, again, picture themselves in this product that they're purchasing. So with that, one of the tips is if you have all those boxes, we totally get it. If you can get them all to the garage or get them to a shed, or like I said, get them to a storage unit, get them somewhere in the basement, somewhere where they're not going to be interrupting the flow of the home itself. That's a really a big one, is that it's just going to show so much better if everything is organized. And I know that's hard. I wish I was an organized person when I have to sell my house someday. That's going to be a challenge for me too. But again, at the end of the day, if you take these kind of tips into consideration, at the end of the day, it's going to equal out more money because there's going to be more interested buyers, which produces a bigger bottom line.
You do have to get your sellers in the mindset that, this is no kind of judgment thing. We all have stuff
Right.
in totes. We all have that one room that we don't let anybody in because it's,
Yes.
has our doom piles and our boxes and totes and all of that. So that's a great advice to get the seller in that mindset that the house you live in isn't always the house you're selling.
Correct.
So I want to move on to something else. So I talked about
Yeah.
when I was doing a little bit of research on Chelsea, I came up with a few things. But when you called, messaged me initially, and we talked about what we might do an episode on, you just dropped, "Oh, I'm a drone pilot," and I'm like, "Well, what? That's a great episode. That's a great idea." So let's kind of turn our attention to that because that's really interesting to me. I just kind of want to start at the beginning. If you could just kind of briefly tell us what's involved in becoming a drone pilot.
Yeah, I when I first started, I had no idea. I should have had a good idea. My dad has been a drone pilot for many years. He was one of the ones that, when it first started to be a thing, he was interested in it and wanted to learn more about it. And he had his pilot's license in the past, so I think that's where the connection came for him. But he has done it for many years, and I've watched him do it. He works in the architecture field, and now surveying, and they use drones for so many different things. He has drones that he operates that are the size of a Volkswagen Beetle that
Oh
he
wow.
puts up in the air. So I knew not a whole lot about it outside of watching him and what he does. So getting into real estate, and once drones kind of became a thing, and having those drone photos that you see, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like that is so stunning, especially on a waterfront property, or, big open fields, or all of that. I thought I really want to be able to provide that as a service. And I'm also a very cheap person, and I never want to pay anybody to do anything that I can learn how to do myself, which is a problem. So I decided that I was going to get my drone pilots. It's a certification, not a license, but certification. Had no idea what I was doing. My dad helped me get prepared for the class. I'm not a good test taker, so I was so nervous. I think I studied for about 6 months. And you have to go, well, the closest for me was to go to Augusta, and you have to go to a testing center that's at an airport, and you sit down, and it's just like your real estate test. Like you take a test, and you either pass or you fail. And I don't know how I did it, but I passed. And so I will be at 2 years, I believe, in August, with having my drone pilot certification. It's part 107. And it is a regulation that's required for any drone photography that's going to be used commercially. So anything that's going to be represented for the sale of something, if it's going to be, anything commercial wise, you need to have your part 107.
So that's interesting because I always envisioned, I don't know why, that you would have somebody out there. Well, you had your dad, lucky for you, but you would have somebody out there saying, no, you're flying that too high, you're flying that too low. It just was more learning the regulations of operating the drone. That's really interesting.
100%. Yeah, it's a lot like real estate. When you go to get your sales agent's class, the class teaches you the regulations and the rules. It doesn't teach you how to be a real estate agent. Is exactly the same as the drone certification. There was nothing to teach me how to turn on a drone, let alone fly it, as part of the regulation course. It was all on, the FAA and their standards and their expectations of you as a professional, flying this object in their airspace, where other things are flying, like airplanes and helicopters and all that good stuff. And it's very serious. It's taken very serious. The regulations are very serious, and they're ever changing, because I believe the drone industry kind of snuck up on the FAA, the popularity of it, and so they were kind of making rules retroactively to kind of cover issues that either had happened or were about to happen. So there's a lot of changes, a lot of regulation, very heavily regulated, and that continues to this day that it gets more and more tight.
So you
Yeah.
mentioned that it's heavily regulated. Did you find yourself bumping into any regulations that caused you any problems in trying to get your shots for your real estate photography?
So thankfully, I have not run into any issues. However, understanding how airspace works was a huge part of the testing. Um, the way it was taught to me, and it's a visual thing, is if you imagine taking like a three-tier wedding cake and flipping it upside down. So imagine an upside down wedding cake and then put the airport right underneath, the highest part of that cake, right? So basically, 400 feet is as high as you can fly a drone, and that is from the ground up, unless you are taking photos of a building. So it can be 400 feet plus the height of whatever building or structure you're taking pictures of, in an open airspace. So that is away from an airport. We have apps that are available that have, all the flight traffic and show you when you can fly and where. The closer you get to an airport, the lower you're able to fly. So imagine that wedding cake, the first tier to the ground, you can't fly at all. So it's a no fly zone. It may be where helicopters are. It may be where like the airport's runway is, where planes are taking off and landing. And then when you get to that next tier out, maybe you can go 100 feet. Maybe the next tier out, you can go 200 feet. So being in Bangor, we're really in a unique situation. Even though we're in rural Maine, Bangor International Airport is a Class C. It's a large airport, and so taking photos in Bangor can sometimes be challenging. You can get variations if you put in a request to the FAA, basically saying, I'm taking shots, of this home for the purpose of real estate. And sometimes it can be instant approval. Sometimes you have to wait, for them to kind of look at your your request and see if it's something that they're going to allow or not. So there are some places in Bangor you cannot fly, but for the most part, they're usually, you can fly them just at a lower level. So you can't go up to that 400 feet, but like I said, you might be able to get to 100, 200, 300 until you get outside of that airspace. And with the newer drones as they come out, a lot of them have the newer ones have chips in them that will basically allow the FAA to track if you are doing something you shouldn't be doing. So that's something to be aware of if you're just out there flying for fun.
I I think we
Be
have
smart.
like 3 up on top of the roof of the barn because our my stepson has had a few drones and I don't know where they are. So, you know, that is
Got a
my
pretty good
guess.
idea.
That is my guess. So, getting back a little more to real estate,
Yeah.
is this drone photography, is this something that you generally suggest? Do sellers ask for it?
Yeah, so as I have it myself, I do it for all listings, that I'm available to do. Obviously for the real estate agent who's hiring a drone photographer to capture a property, it's usually your higher end properties that are either on waterfront, like I mentioned, maybe it's a farm that has these big open, fields, or maybe you're close to the lake, or maybe you're close to the ocean, maybe you're close to the mountains. Maine has, very, very diverse regions all over. So you do see them more on your higher end homes, but not necessarily. They're great for land. If you have a property that might have, a very small cabin on it, but it's 100 acres and it's, on the side of a mountain, that would be a great, property to use drone for. I think it helps just giving an idea of, what you're purchasing. It's giving you a little more of insight from the sky. Are you going to see it like that on a daily basis? No, you're not. Absolutely not. But it's going to give you an idea of your surroundings. Even in the city, kind of shows you the neighborhood. It kind of shows you what's around. Is there, a big, you know, city dump right near right down the road that you might not have been aware of? Will that be in the picture? Maybe, maybe not.
Hmm.
It depends on kind of what you're focusing on. But I think it's definitely helpful for people to see something from a different view. And I definitely think it brings people in to look. And so when you're online and you're scrolling through and you see one that has that big, wide, beautiful shot from the sky, I think you're more likely to click and kind of investigate and see what it is, even if it might not be something that you originally were searching for. So it's definitely going to bring in more views, which is exactly what we as realtors want. We want as many people to see your property as possible, because ultimately one of them is going to be the one that buys your home.
That's a great point because in my mind, when I think of drone photography, I think of that oceanfront property or the
Yeah.
farm, or lakefront, something like that. But being able to be in a neighborhood or, in the city to see what's around you, that's great. So do you have any other thoughts when it comes to drone photography? Because I know that not everybody does it, and for you, you're in a position that you can do it relatively, I don't know about easily, but more
Yep.
conveniently than somebody that may have to go and hire somebody.
So I think and I'm going to just speak for the market that we're in. We're in a really unique market right now that, yes, it is still a seller's market. Yes, there is still lower inventory, absolutely. But as a seller, if you can put yourself in the seat of a buyer, right? A lot of people, when you're selling your house, you might be buying another house. So you're also a buyer. If you can kind of think about how you shop, how you consume, um, I think I think at the end of the day, with interest rates where they are and where buyers are in the position that they're in now, they are taking a little more time than they were last year to make a decision on what property they're purchasing. They're thinking about that monthly payment. They're thinking about, the investment that they're making, and so I think there has been a slowdown in. Before it was, I've got 5 buyers and I've got, 2 offers over asking. I think now we're seeing buyers be more cautious, because of that interest rate that we're seeing. And so they are taking more time to investigate. They're taking their time before they run right out and look. They're not necessarily making that purchase uneducated, by any stretch of the imagination. So I think any tool that's going to assist in getting a buyer to look, that is going to assist in getting them to consider, maybe something they weren't really looking for, but now that they see it, they like the idea of it. I think it's a great tool to have, and if it's something that the agent, is has access to and is willing to do, and it would be helpful to for that property, I think it's a great option. If you can fly in that area, safely and under the licensure, I think it's a great addition to assist in buyers looking at your home.
I love that you brought up the point, which doesn't really directly go to photography or drone photography, but I love that you brought up the point that it there does seem to be a little shift in the air. I mean, it's still a seller's market and inventory is still
Yes,
low,
it is.
but I'm feeling it as well. Just a shift in the air that people aren't as desperate.
Yes.
Um,
They can't be,
they
they have
can't
to
be, but
be
and they do
an
need to be a
educated
little more
consumer.
thoughtful when, you're can't get a property, you can't get an offer accepted, and your interest rate's only going to be, whatever, 3.5%, then you have a little less at stake. And I
Right.
know that for my company, I don't know if I would call it buyer's remorse, but we are seeing a lot of folks that bought during COVID and maybe a little bit after that are selling now and making a change. And luckily they're still getting a nice price and
Yeah.
not underwater or upside down with their properties. So that's a good thing because nobody wants that. Nobody wants that
Right.
either. But I think that everybody in the industry is hopeful that that shift is actually changing. I just want to talk to you, just getting back just a little bit about your marketing company.
Yeah.
And I think that I just, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about a lot of things, but I've been thinking about the point that you made with the stock photos. And um, it goes back to being able to, and I just did an episode with our friend Sue Roberts. It was episode 6 on the podcast about
Yeah.
being authentic online. And we think of ourselves and pictures of ourselves and videos of ourselves, but it's also our products.
Yeah, it really is, and even if you don't sell a product, you're a service provider, I mean, there's still ways to capture that, that what you do, like your job, for instance, title work. People think, oh, you sit down at a closing and you hand me the paperwork to sign, which is definitely a part of it for
Mhm.
sure. But I think finding ways to capture all of the different facets of a business. I mean, every small business, every large business has many, many, many different roles, and kind of showcasing your value, I think, is in exposing that and showing what you do, how you do it, how much time it takes. And if there's a way to do that through photography, even videography, I think it's only going to help you as a business owner to sell yourself, to the consumer who's ultimately spending their dollars on your product or service.
I think people are hungry for different too.
Mhm.
They're just hungry for real and, authentic and something that jumps out, and people that can laugh at themselves a little bit or maybe make light, because we're in a serious business, and we have to we have to make our fun where we can get it, right?
Yes, absolutely. And Sue Roberts does a fantastic job at that. If anybody is not following her on social media, she's great for authenticity. She really is.
Well, I've told several people that when I think of something I'd like to do for the podcast, and I'm so lucky because I have a wealth of contacts between lenders, real estate agents, people in the industry. Because when I
Yeah.
first thought about doing the podcast, I'm like, well, I don't know anybody famous. I'm like, you don't need to know somebody famous. I know so many people that are so knowledgeable and have such great personalities. But anyway, when I do think of an episode, somebody usually jumps to mind. But I'm telling you, I was so thrilled when you reached out and wanted to collaborate on something. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I was so scared to reach out. I,
Oh, no
I,
way.
I listened to your podcast with Alicia Hardy, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I've never done a podcast. I think it's so cool. I listen to podcasts. It sounds terrifying to be on one, but I just talked to Bobbie a couple of weeks ago, and I'm gonna reach out to her. So I'm glad I did, and I'm glad you weren't like, why is she reaching out to me? Because that was always the fear, right? That like, who are you?
I get that. I totally get that, but no, absolutely. Anybody listening, if you have a great idea, because this is new to me and this is something new that I'm doing, and a lot of challenges that I'm facing to get this done, but I'm absolutely loving it. I'm absolutely loving it,
Awesome.
and I want to grow it and see where it goes. So when people reach out to me, it means more than you know. So I appreciate it, Chelsea. Hey, I want to thank Chelcie for coming on the show today. And if you want to learn more about Chelcie, go to mainrealestateroundtable.com/show notes. And you can also check her out at Market Maine Marketing and Photography Solutions. This has been the Maine Real Estate Roundtable podcast with Bobbie Grenier. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion and will share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to leave a review and follow the podcast so you don't miss new episodes. The content of this podcast is for informational purposes and not intended as legal advice or representation by myself or any of the guests on the podcast. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep it real.